So today I just woke up a little bit more sassier than usual, so if I sound a little bit more sarcastic during this whole commentary, don't pay too much and attention. And yeah, so I just woke up like this. I just woke up a little funny and I decided, you know what, let's just do a commentary because it's fun. Anyway, so one of my more common questions that I do get is going to be, hey John, how do you move so fast in this game? What is your movement speed and what is your star chart build so I can actually just get as much movement speed as you have? Yeah, I usually, for the most part, I just showcase my movement speed and it's usually not that impressive. But it's not so much how much movement speed I have, it's how I utilize the movement speed for me to actually just speed far through that dungeon or dungeons in general. So I'm just going to be just talking about some of the little things and tactics that I normally do in order for me to actually just properly speed for dungeons. Now, keep one thing in mind, that these are going to be things based on my own preference. This is not a thing that you should be doing, but if you want to do it, then you can do so. But these are just based on my own preference and stuff that I do for me to feel more comfortable in doing dungeons. And yeah, so I decided to do this video. I'm just going to be just keeping this very brief introduction for everyone who just watched like the first 3 minutes of the video. Leave a like and subscribe, by the way, hello. And also I do have another video maybe planned out, maybe I'm just going to scrap it, who knows, and that is going to be for a tier list and just going over the characters which I think that are going to be the best in terms of endgame speed farming, because I do get this question a lot. It's kind of ridiculous. It's going to be, which is better, this or this character? I always tell them, use the character that you like, but apparently that's not enough. I always tell them that preference is always the main thing that you should worry about in terms of character that you want to pick up, but I still get the question nonetheless. It's like, but which is the character that I should be using? I'm like, I just told you. But yes, I recorded like a 40-minute long video just explaining my tier list over the character. If you want to see it, let me know in the comment section down below. Personally, I don't want to do a tier list because at the end of the day, opinions is based on individuals based on preference and yada yada yada. Just wanted to mention that one because I even get that comment even on my second channel. Now, I'm going to be just talking about some of the little tactics and techniques that I personally like to do in order for me to improve my dungeons per hour. I mentioned this in my speed farming video that I made a while back, where there's going to be a couple little things that you need to keep in mind in order for you to properly speed farm dungeons. Number one is obviously movement speed in general. Of course, movement speed is important if you want to properly speed farm, because the movement speed is how fast you move, but movement speed is not everything, which I just need to mention this out there. Movement speed is not everything. Movement speed doesn't equal speed farming. You just need movement speed to actually help you out with speed farming. So keep that one in mind. This is extremely important for me to just mention this right now, because usually when people see someone just move fast, they just go, hey, how much movement speed do you have? And then you tell them the movement speed, they just go like, what? If that character is faster than how the hell are you moving so fast? Are you glitching the game? Are you using speed hacks or something? I don't know. That's one of the major factors that you need to take into account whenever you're speed farming. The other thing is just going to be dungeon knowledge, type of dungeon, knowing which type of dungeons to complete the objective, and obviously some movement speed techniques. That all of those things I did mention on the speed farming video, which I'll reiterate this in this video once again. The other thing is just going to be dungeon knowledge. Dungeon knowledge is extremely important in this game. I cannot stress this enough. Dungeon knowledge is as important as movement speed, if not more important. I will argue being more important than actually just stacking a lot of movement speed, because what's the point in having a lot of movement speed if you don't know where the hell you're going? So having dungeon knowledge is important for you to actually speed farm, because you want to see a dungeon from really far away and know where the boss is located before getting into the dungeon, so you can get into the dungeon and get out. The point of speed farming is moving from point A, which is one dungeon, to point B, which is the next dungeon, and try to just complete those two objectives as fast as possible. So you need to get into the dungeon as fast as possible. You need to complete the dungeon as fast as possible and then get out. It's not, oh, I can just get into the dungeon really quickly, but my damage is not high enough, so I'm not going to be able to just kill like the objective really quickly. If you don't have enough damage, then don't expect to speed farm, because that's not going to be how it works. You need to have high damage, you need to have high movement speed, and you need to know where you're going. That's the point of speed farming. Knowing what type of objective that you're getting yourself into. If you haven't noticed, on Trove there is something on the top right that usually tells you what objective is that dungeon before you get into the dungeon. And in some cases, some dungeons only spawn one type of objective. There are dungeons in, let's just say, the top side, that is only boss dungeons. Knowing what type of objective is also very important. So let's just say, for example, in the background footage you might be seeing just me running around with Pirate Captain because I want to showcase that, hey, you can speed farm with every single character in the entirety of the game. You don't need to use a specific character to speed farm. You can use every character in the entirety of the game. So I'm showcasing that even with something like the Pirate Captain, which is one of the worst characters in the game in my own personal opinion for dungeon grinding, is still efficient and you can still do dungeons really quickly. So that's why I always tell you, pick the class that you like, because you can use any single character. Stats in terms of damage output matter more than the character in general. So if you have a lot of stats, no matter which character that you're using, you're going to speed farm. Knowing what type of objective is going to be very important for certain reasons. So there are certain characters who benefit better or do better with certain abilities against certain objectives. Let's just take, for example, the Shadowhunter. The Shadowhunter is the perfect example that I always tell. Shadowhunter is a character that you can use two abilities for the most part, but those two abilities work really well in tandem. That's why I have the Shadowhunter as arguably the best dungeon class in the game. And that's maybe because the Shadowhunter has everything that you want for a dungeon grinding character. If you want bossing, then you have burst damage in not only basic attack, but also you have burst damage with the ultimate ability, damage over time. Outside of that, you have stuff for Cursed Skull, which is going to be mainly Sun Snare. If you do have high enough stats, you can one-shot enemy as soon as they spawn. So the kill time on every single objective on the Shadowhunter is very consistent. However, if you want to be consistent, you want to use specific abilities for specific dungeons. So Cursed Skull, you want to use Sun Snare. For bosses, you want to use basic attack. And that's mainly some of the things that you can do depending on the character that you're using. There's going to be other characters who mainly use like one ability for most everything. My main character, the Knight, you can generally just use Spirit Square for everything or basic attack for everything. For me personally, I did mention this in how do I use my Knight video, is I use Spirit Square to build up speed and to start off, boss battles, because the Spirit Square has 9 block range, so it's triple the range of the basic attack. So by the time I get into the enemy, I would have already thrown down a Spirit Square and I can just easily hit with a basic attack by the time I just get next to the enemy. So it does help me out in just maintaining consistent kill time with that character. That's the main reason I personally like to use like Spirit Square, to build up speed, to kill regular enemies, or to use stuff like Overcharge. And then with bosses and Cursed Skull, I use just the basic attack because the basic attack is extremely good for those type of objectives. And then there's going to be classes like the Pirate Captain, which you're seeing in the background footage. The Pirate Captain, I generally just use the ultimate ability mostly against bosses, because the ultimate ability is going to be much more consistent against bosses than Cursed Skull, because on Cursed Skull you can just throw down Pretend Pirate and turrets and basic attack and you can kill enemies quite quickly. But against a boss you need a little bit more damage, and the ultimate ability is really good because if the boss summons minions, then the ultimate ability's AoE is going to kill the minions really quickly and still do damage to the boss. So it's just going to make the kill time much more consistent on the Pirate Captain against bosses. So those things you need to keep in mind whenever you're doing type of objective, because if you only stick to, let's just say, Shadowhunter and just use basic attack on everything, the character is not going to feel good for Cursed Skull, because AoE or the crowd control on the character is not particularly great. So you're going to mainly just focus in just hitting the enemy with abilities that can just hit all enemies and Cursed Skulls, and the basic attack against regular enemies or momentum building. That's mainly the reason why I personally prefer energy regeneration on the Shadowhunter, because energy regen helps you in maintaining Sun Snare, which is really good for Cursed Skulls. There's going to be other things that you have to take into account. Whenever you're using different types of character, just check which ability is just good, which ability is good for crowd control, which ability is good for burst damage if the character has a good basic attack. Do you have an ability with low cooldown, which is good for either momentum building or just spamming the ability in general? Check all of the abilities on the character that you're using, and you're going to see that there are certain characters that are just much better than a lot of people give it credit. Like Fate Trickster is one of the characters that me personally, a lot of people consider that character to be one of the worst. I hardly disagree. Like, the character is just much better than people let it out to be. It has some pretty good tools, especially for dungeon grinding. The Vanguardian, a lot of people just make fun of the Vanguardian, especially on the Xbox side of things. Vanguardian is also extremely good for speed farming. There are better characters than the Vanguardian, but the Vanguardian is still really, really good. And there's other characters that you can easily just experiment and see how good they really can be. if you actually experiment with all of the types of abilities that the character can use. Speaking of the abilities, there are other things that you need to keep in mind, and that's going to be mainly just some movement speed techniques. Usually when I mention this movement speed technique, everyone just defaults into, oh, you can just spam left and right and just moving forward, which essentially just wiggles your character, or does a little bit of a strafe, which makes your character run really quickly, which is a thing, by the way. You just wiggle your stick, or you press A and D for really rapidly while holding forward. Whenever you're just holding out and doing that wiggle, you can move really quickly, and it's percentage and it's really wild. But on console, that's not fun to actually do. But when I've ever mentioned just movement speed techniques, I usually never just talk about the strafing. I go over some of the other abilities. There is going to be abilities like dodging, jumping, jump shooting, jump dodging, all those type of things, like volatile bounder, for example, animation canceling. There's a lot of things that you can do in order to improve your speed. Let's just take, for example, the Shadowhunter. The Shadowhunter is most popular characters in the game, so that's why I usually just default into the Shadowhunter, because most people are very familiar with it. But the Shadowhunter has a lot of things outside of just holding down basic attack and just pressing dodge like every 8 seconds or something like that. I mentioned this in how do I use the Shadowhunter video and my 40 KPR video, that the Shadowhunter benefits a lot from jump shooting. Jump shooting is going to be a little bit of a movement speed technique that you can just end up using for not only the Shadowhunter, but pretty much most characters in the game that have a movement speed reduction whenever you are pressing the ability or are attacking. So the Shadowhunter benefits greatly from it, because the basic attack, I believe, reduces your movement speed by 40%. Movement speed reduction by 40% is a lot. That's, again, almost half of your movement speed just cut down immediately right there. What you end up doing is that instead of just holding down the trigger while on the ground, you jump and tap your shoot button. What it actually just do is going to be, since you're just jumping, your movement speed reduction doesn't trigger immediately because you're not touching a block. The game counts as if you were free falling or jumping. So movement speed reduction abilities, when you are in midair, it doesn't reduce your movement speed immediately. It only reduces your movement speed immediately as soon as you touch a block. I did also mention this in my volatile bounder video, and I showcase like live example on how does it work. Volatile bounder, when you are in midair, your movement speed just gradually decreases rather than just immediate. So you can actually just use the bump jump on the volatile bounder, which allows you to just maintain the movement speed without the need of just reducing your movement speed. So it allows you to not use Knight subclass if you want to just keep full benefits from volatile bounder. That's why I have it even way better than Gonda, despite Gonda having like unlimited jumps. It's because Gonda, since it spawns blocks, it immediately just cuts down your movement speed even while in midair, which is a huge disadvantage comparable to volatile bounder. Characters like Shadowhunter benefits from jump shooting. So you can just hold, like press jump and shoot, and your movement speed doesn't reduce immediately, it just reduces gradually, which it will allow you to just keep jumping and shooting and just maintaining the movement speed while throwing down a basic attack. Which another thing is going to be is jump dodging. Most, if not all, characters in the entirety of the game, whenever you're dodging, you have like an animation end lag, including the Shadowhunter. Like there is an end lag to your animation that allows you to just go ahead and reduce your movement speed. So if you are doing dodge in midair, it doesn't lower that movement speed, you keep all the forward momentum. And despite that, even if you are in midair, you keep not only all the forward momentum, but instead you increase your range on your dodge, which again, I explained this also in another video, which was on the Neon Ninja movement speed technique on how to do front shadow flips. Dodging, while like dodging is determined on how much movement speed you have. So the more movement speed you have, the farther away the dodge is going to be, and it's going to increase even further if you do jump, which is a movement speed technique. That's why like whenever you do see a lot of people speed farming, they jump and dodge rather than just do the dodge on the ground. They jump dodge. So jump dodging is really good. Jump shooting is really good. Animation canceling. Characters benefit from animation canceling. Shadowhunter, again using the example of Shadowhunter, you can cancel out the full animation on the basic attack with a dodge. So if you are fast enough, you can just throw down the basic attack and then just perform a dodge. 1 or 2 arrows are just going to come out, and if you're doing a lower portal, you are going to just hit 1 or 2 arrows, keep all the forward momentum, and you essentially are going to be canceling out the basic attack animation killing the enemy and moving forward with all the movement speed buff. There's so many things that you can just do in order to improve your speed outside of just increasing your movement speed stat. Your movement speed stat is very important, don't get me wrong, but it's not everything. Other characters that, before I go, there's other characters that benefit from like animation canceling. Mainly it's going to be like Vanguardian. Vanguardian has the I-beam. If you do jump and I-beam, it will cancel the whole animation and you still can throw down an I-beam. It's kind of crazy how fast you can throw down an I-beam while jumping. So Vanguardian can just benefit from that one. There are characters who normally have a bad dodge but benefit greatly whenever you're jumping, you're doing a jump dodge. Vanguardian is one of them. Vanguardian does have a pretty good dodge when you're doing a jump dodge. And same with Dino Tamer. Dino Tamer on the ground dodge is kind of bad, but whenever you're jumping and doing a dodge in midair is really good. So the point of speed farming is to waste as little time as possible going from point A to point B. Momentum building, I didn't mention that in throughout the whole video, but momentum building is a thing that I did mention for years now, which is something that allows you to just build up as much movement speed as possible without the need of wasting time. Always keep in mind that there's a lot more things than just let me just get as much movement speed as possible and I'm immediately just a god on speed farming. Don't worry too much about speed farming if you cannot do damage. Worry more about just completing the objective as efficiently as you can, but do not think like, oh yes, I'm just going to be running at the same speed as this person who's just maxed out in light and just speed farming like crazy. That's why like using a character that is just really good for speed farming at the end game, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be good at any portion of the game. So just pick whichever character that you like. Just be as efficient with the character that you like, because trust me when I say this, you can use any character in the game and you can speed farm. Anyways, that's going to be the entirety of the video today. Again, if I sound a little bit more sarcastic than usual, I just woke up like this and I was like, hey, you know what, screw it. Look at this video that you see like in the background. This is the same video that I did right there, but only live commentary. I was like halfway through like editing this video. I was like, nah, I don't care, I'm going to do post commentary instead and just leave it the way that it is. And yeah, so here I am just completing this video right here. This is one of my most frequently asked questions. There's no script, there's nothing, it's just me talking about it. And potentially again I might do the tier list, but I really don't want to do it. But if you want to see it, I've already recorded it just in case if a lot of people really want to see it. But if no one wants it, I could care less. I just leave it the way I just can leave it right there. But anyways, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for sticking around as always. Thank you for 4.5k. Let's go for 4.6k. And yeah, I hope to see you guys next time. Take care and keep on hunting. And of course, keep in mind, these are stuff that I personally like to do to improve my dungeons per hour, but you can do so if you want. With all that being said, farewell.